I turned 93 last winter. And the strange thing about getting this old is not how much you remember. It is how clearly you begin to see what never mattered in the first place. When people visit me now, they think I spend my days thinking about the big moments of my life. My wedding, the day my daughter was born, the summer my husband and I bought our first house outside Cleveland. Those memories are there, of course, but honestly, that is not what sits with me the most. What sits with me are the things I wasted myself on. The needless worrying, the silent grudges, the pressure to be perfect, the exhausting habit of trying to make everyone happy while slowly disappearing myself. And maybe I am telling you this because I wish someone had told me sooner. At 93, you stop pretending. You stop acting like life goes on forever. You stop believing you will eventually become the person you keep postponing. You realize your days were never unlimited in the first place. For most of my life, I was terrified of disappointing people. I do not think my children even knew how much of myself I buried trying to be good. I was the dependable woman, the calm woman, the woman who handled things quietly without complaining. When my husband Frank lost his job in 1978, I picked up extra shifts at the hospital and never told anyone how scared I was. I would smile through dinner, help the kids with homework, then sit alone in the bathroom after everyone fell asleep and cry into a towel so nobody could hear me. I thought that was strength. Now I think it was loneliness. Back then, I believed love had to be earned through sacrifice. If I worked harder, gave more, needed less, then people would keep loving me. So I became the kind of woman who said yes when she wanted to say no. Yes, I can babysit. Yes, I can host Christmas again. Yes, I can drive across town. Yes, I am fine. I said I'm fine so many times in my life that eventually I stopped knowing whether it was true. The worst part is that people get used to your silence. They begin expecting it. There was one Thanksgiving, I think sometime in the early 1990s, when my entire family came over. I cooked for 3 straight days: turkey, pies, stuffing, sweet potatoes, homemade rolls. My feet hurt so badly that I had to sit down while washing dishes. And at the end of the night, after everyone left, I remember standing alone in the kitchen, looking at the dirty plates and half-empty coffee cups, thinking, if I disappeared tomorrow, would anyone even realize how tired I am? That thought scared me. Not because my family was cruel. They were not. They loved me. But I had trained everyone to believe I could carry everything without help. You teach people how to treat you by what you continue tolerating. I wish I had understood that at 40 instead of 93. One of the saddest things about getting older is realizing how much time women spend apologizing for existing, apologizing for aging, apologizing for gaining weight, apologizing for needing rest, apologizing for wanting time alone, apologizing for saying no. I did all of it. After I turned 50, I became obsessed with looking younger. I bought expensive creams we could barely afford. I dyed my hair for years because I was afraid of gray. Every wrinkle felt like failure. Can you imagine that? A face that had laughed with children, survived grief, stayed awake through fevers, kissed a husband goodbye for 48 years. And I looked at it with disappointment because it was aging. What a terrible way to treat yourself. I see younger women doing it now too, pulling at their skin in mirrors, hating photographs of themselves, refusing to wear swimsuits, waiting to enjoy life until they become acceptable in their own eyes. Please do not do that to yourself. Your body is not an ornament. It is your home. I learned that lesson too late. After Frank died in 2011, I stopped caring about appearances for a while because grief strips vanity right out of you. When you are sitting beside a hospital bed, holding the hand of the person you love most in this world, your wrinkles suddenly become very unimportant. The morning after his funeral, I found one of his sweaters hanging near the laundry room door. I buried my face in it because it still smelled like his aftershave. And I remember thinking, I would give anything to grow old with him again. Not young, not perfect, old. People spend so much time fearing aging without understanding what the alternative really is. Growing old is a privilege that many people never receive. That truth changed me. I started wearing comfortable shoes instead of fashionable ones. I started eating dessert when I wanted dessert. I started saying no without explaining myself for 20 minutes afterward. And some people did not like the newer version of me. That is another thing nobody tells you. When you finally stop exhausting yourself for others, some people become uncomfortable because they benefited from your exhaustion. But I was tired of abandoning myself just to keep everybody else comfortable. At this age, peace becomes more valuable than approval. I no longer care if everyone understands me. I no longer care if distant relatives think I should behave differently. And I certainly no longer care about winning arguments that nobody will remember 5 years from now. What I care about now is much simpler. I care about phone calls with my granddaughter, warm sunlight through my kitchen window, the sound of rain at night, a quiet morning with coffee, the few people who stayed kind through the hardest parts of life. That is what remains in the end. Not status, not perfection, not other people's opinions. Just love, just peace, just the small, ordinary moments we were too distracted to appreciate while we still had them. By the time I reached my 80s, I started noticing something painful. The older people became, the less they talked about achievements, and the more they talked about regret. Not dramatic regrets either, not I should have become rich, not I should have bought a bigger house. It was always quieter than that. I should have spent more time with my sister. I should have taken the trip. I should have worried less. I should have forgiven him sooner. Small sentences, heavy sentences. I heard enough of them to realize people do not break their own hearts all at once. They do it slowly, over decades, by holding on to things that poison their peace. And I was no different. There was a woman named Eleanor I used to know back in the 70s. We were neighbors for years. Our children grew up together. She used to bring over peach cobbler on Sundays, and I would send her home with leftover soup during winters. Then one afternoon we had an argument. I cannot even remember exactly what started it now. Something stupid involving money we had both contributed for a church event. Hurt feelings, pride, misunderstood words. But instead of fixing it, we both waited for the other person to apologize first. Weeks passed, then months, then years, And eventually the silence between us became normal. Do you know how frightening that is? How two people can love each other deeply, then slowly become strangers, simply because neither one wants to take the first step. One winter, nearly 15 years later, I heard Eleanor had become sick, very sick. I remember standing in my kitchen holding the phone after someone told me, thinking, I should go see her. But pride is a stubborn thing. I told myself maybe next week would be better. Maybe when she got stronger. Maybe after the holidays. There are people reading this right now who are doing the exact same thing. You think there will be more time because thinking otherwise feels uncomfortable. But life does not ask whether you feel ready. Eleanor died before spring arrived. And do you know what haunted me afterward? Not the argument, the lost years, the birthdays we missed, the conversations we never had, the friendship we threw away over something neither of us would have even remembered clearly 20 years later. I cried harder for wasted time than for death itself. That was when I finally understood something. Some people spend their entire lives waiting for the perfect apology instead of protecting the relationship. Now, I am not telling you to allow mistreatment. Some things are genuinely harmful and deserve distance. But many of the conflicts people carry are not like that. They are ego, miscommunication, stubbornness, pain left unattended for too long. And meanwhile, life keeps moving. Your children grow older, your body slows down. The people you love begin disappearing one by one. I buried my younger brother in 2004 after a sudden stroke. He was only 68. The terrible thing is that we had barely spoken during the last 2 years of his life because of politics. Politics. Can you imagine something so ridiculous? 2 elderly siblings sitting in separate houses, both lonely, both aging, both too proud to call because each believed they were right. After his funeral, my niece handed me an old photograph of us as children. We could not have been older than 8 and 10. We were standing barefoot in my parents' backyard, holding watermelon slices, laughing with our mouths open. I stared at that picture for a very long time, and all I could think was, that little boy loved me once, without conditions. Life hardens people slowly. Arguments harden them. Fear hardens them. The world convinces people that being correct matters more than being connected. It does not. I promise you, when death enters a room, nobody cares who won the argument 10 years ago. They care about love. They care about time. They care about whether they showed up for each other when it mattered. Some of the loneliest people I have ever met were not unloved people. They were people who kept score their entire lives. People who remembered every insult, every disappointment, every moment they felt wronged. By the end, their hearts had become crowded with resentment. And resentment is heavy. You carry it so long that eventually you do not even realize how exhausted it has made you. For years I carried anger toward my mother too. She was a difficult woman, critical, hard to please. Nothing was ever done quite right in her eyes. When I was younger, I kept hoping she would become softer someday, more affectionate, more openly loving, but she never did. and I wasted decades grieving a version of my mother that did not exist. It took me nearly 70 years to accept something simple. People can only love you from the level of healing they themselves have reached. My mother grew up during the Great Depression. She lost a sibling as a child. She married young, struggled constantly, and carried anxiety her entire life. She did love me. She just did not know how to express it gently. Once I understood that, forgiveness became easier. Not instant, not magical, but easier. A few months before she died, I visited her nursing home. She was already drifting in and out mentally by then. At one point, she grabbed my hand suddenly and whispered, "I hope you know I tried." Those 6 words broke something open inside me. Because all those years, I had been measuring what she gave me against what I wish she had given me instead. And maybe many people do that with the ones they love. Your father, your spouse, your children. You hold them against impossible versions of who they could have been. Instead of seeing the wounded human being standing in front of you. Age teaches you this. Most people are carrying invisible pain. Once you understand that, you become softer, less judgmental, less interested in punishment. These days, I protect my peace differently. I do not chase conflict. I do not argue endlessly online. I do not need strangers to agree with me to feel secure anymore. And I refuse to spend the little time I have left angry all the time. Because at 93, time feels different. You stop assuming there will always be another Christmas, another summer, another phone call. You begin understanding that every ordinary moment is temporary. And strangely enough, that realization makes life more beautiful. The older I get, the more I understand that life is not really made of big moments. It is made of ordinary Tuesdays, small conversations in the kitchen, a hand resting on yours during a car ride, someone remembering how you take your coffee, the sound of laughter drifting in from another room. Those are the things that stay, not the expensive furniture, not the promotions, not the endless stress people destroy themselves over. I know that now because most of the important things I once worried about have completely disappeared. The company Frank worked for all those years does not even exist anymore. The neighbors we tried so hard to impress are gone. Half the things I once lost sleep over cannot even be remembered clearly now. And yet I nearly sacrificed my entire life to those things. I used to believe being productive every second made me valuable. Maybe your generation understands this feeling too. That constant guilt when you rest. That voice telling you that you should be doing more, working more, improving more, achieving more. I carried that voice for almost my entire life. Even after retirement, I could not sit still without feeling ashamed. If I spent an afternoon reading, I felt lazy. If I took a nap, I felt irresponsible. If I was not helping someone, cleaning something, organizing something, I felt useless. It is exhausting to live like that. One afternoon in my late 70s, my granddaughter Emily came over while I was folding laundry. I remember she looked at me and said, "Grandma, why are you always working?" I laughed and told her, "Because things need to get done." And she said something I have never forgotten. She said, But you already did enough. I actually had to turn away because it made me emotional. Nobody had ever said that to me before, not once. For so many years, I believed my worth came from what I provided for other people. I thought love had to be earned constantly through service and sacrifice. But eventually, your body forces you to slow down, whether you want to or not. At 86, I slipped on ice outside my apartment building and fractured my hip. Recovery took months, months of needing help, months of moving slowly, months of sitting still long enough to think. That kind of stillness changes a person. For the first time in my life, I could not distract myself with busyness. I had to face myself quietly. And I realized how much of my life had been spent rushing through dinners, rushing through conversations, rushing through mornings, rushing through entire years. Always believing happiness was waiting somewhere later, after the next paycheck, after the kids grew up, after retirement, after life became easier. But life never truly becomes easier. It simply becomes shorter. That realization frightened me at first. Then, strangely, it set me free. I began noticing things I had ignored for decades. The smell of clean bed sheets, birds outside my window in the early morning, the comfort of warm soup on cold evenings. How healing silence can be when it is not filled with anxiety. I started letting myself enjoy life without needing to justify it. And I stopped caring so much about what other people thought of my choices. That one took me 90 years to learn. When you are young, opinions feel enormous. You worry constantly about disappointing people. You shape yourself into whatever version will receive the least criticism. But eventually you realize something important. People will judge you no matter what you do. If you speak up, you are difficult. If you stay quiet, you are weak. If you focus on yourself, you are selfish. If you give too much, people simply expect more. You cannot build a peaceful life around other people's shifting expectations. I think many women especially lose themselves this way. They spend decades being everything for everyone else, and then wake up one day wondering who they became underneath all the roles. Mother, wife, caretaker, employee, helper. But underneath all those titles was still a human being who needed rest, joy, friendship, and love too. I wish I had protected that woman sooner. These days my life is very small, and honestly, it is beautiful. I wake up slowly, I make coffee, I sit near the window with a blanket over my knees and watch the morning light move across the room. Sometimes my grandson calls just to tell me about his day. Sometimes nobody calls at all. And strangely, neither kind of day feels empty anymore. I think peace arrives when you finally stop demanding that life look different than it does. At 93, I do not need excitement every moment. I do not need to prove anything anymore. I do not need everyone to admire me or understand me. I just need honesty, kindness, a little laughter, and the courage to appreciate what is still here while it is still here, because one day it will not be. That is the truth age teaches you. Everything ends. The people you love, the body you live in, the ordinary routines you barely notice right now. One day even your own voice becomes a memory in someone else's mind, and knowing that should not depress you. It should wake you up. Stop waiting to enjoy your life. Stop postponing peace. Stop giving your energy to things that drain your spirit and give nothing meaningful back. Call the person you miss. Eat the dessert. Wear the comfortable clothes. Forgive yourself for being human. Let people misunderstand you if they want to. Most of all, stop treating life like a rehearsal. This is it. This ordinary day you're living right now, this is your life. And from where I am sitting at 93, I can tell you with complete honesty, it is far more precious than you think.